Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Psychic Kitchen. Today we have William Michael Forbes. You can find him at his website right there, williammichaelforbes.com. How's everyone doing today?
Doing good, man. Thanks for the invite. Glad to be here with you guys. It's like I said, been a while since I've known Jimmy. It's my first time meeting you, Thomas. It's an honor and a privilege.
Yes,
Looking forward
sir. Yes,
to
sir.
whatever unfolds today. Who knows?
Well, man, what I'm interested in is how did you get on this journey? What led you into it?
Well, I kind of fell into it more than led into it. I 20, when I was 20 years of age, my guardian angel John, I was about to jump off a bridge in Toronto, and this voice spoke to me and said, "Get down, go to the payphone, call this phone number, ask for this man. He'll help you." And I did. I listened to the voice, and that ended up completely changing my life. And then about 5.5 years ago, after many trials and tribulations with other things, my wife's deceased mother started speaking to me while we were driving in a car through Newfoundland, Canada.
Mhm.
And that's opened the floodgates for talking to Buddha and Jesus and ascended masters, other multidimensional beings. And now I just share the wisdom of the masters with people that are open and receptive to elevating their consciousness away from fear back to love. That's that's it in a nutshell.
Mm. That's a sort of, in a way, that's a cool story. I mean, we all have sort of events, I guess, that led us to where we are today, and I guess that the masters, spirit, etc. They tend to show up, don't they? We're in times of despair when we need them. It's almost like, do you find that they sit there, or whatever, that they're there watching us, waiting to sort of step in? Do you find that?
Well, for
Um,
me, I would say that for me back then, I had no knowledge of anything. All I was filled with was the conditioning and programming of my environment that said you were basically meaningless and unimportant.
mm,
And he punched through that barrier in that moment when I was like literally had my foot out off the bridge when
mm,
he came through. So sometimes they'll insist they can punch their way through your limitations, but generally speaking, unless you decide to be open to another opportunity, because I remember thinking at that moment, if there's anybody or anything that could help me right now, I'll take it. And
mm.
that's when I heard his voice. So it really is a matter of whether or not you're open and receptive, receiving guidance, wisdom, and knowledge from higher
Mm.
vibrational beings.
So you had to ask. Do you think that's the thing? We have to ask for them to step in. They won't just come in regardless.
That's correct. It's a function of will. Unless if you're dealing with lower vibrational entities, they'll jump in on you,
Mm,
regardless of whether you ask them permission. If you're on a low vibrational state, they'll interview. But the higher vibrational beings, you must request to say, "I'm needing guidance. I'm needing assistance. I'm open and receptive to knowing the truth, to knowing love," and then they can actually step in.
mm. So it's,
Let me
it's like that.
let
Sorry.
me ask you a question because I get this question so much from clients and like live feeds and whatever. A lot of people are like, how do I distinguish a lower vibrational being from a higher vibrational being? For me, I invoke that universal law where I have to ask them 3 times and they have to answer correctly. But how do you distinguish it?
Well, how I distinguish it is it's either a vibration of fear or it's not a vibration of fear. It's either love or fear. It's only those two. That's as simplistic as I can possibly say. People that are in a state of fear are open and receptive, being influenced by lower vibrational energies. People in a state of love will tend to attract them or desirous of something different than their fear. If you want something other than what you're experiencing, you'll open a pathway to receiving guidance from angels, guides, your guardian angels, other multidimensional beings that are on that same frequency that you're on, because you have to be on that station. You have to be tuned into them in order to connect to them.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah. Because a lot of people, they're always asking me, how do I communicate with my spirit guides? How do I do this? How do I do this? And it's usually that one question. I
Mm.
think a lot of times I feel like people, and we all have lots of guides, we all connect with different beings, but at the same time, I sometimes feel like they're asking me that question. And there's a lot of help there, but you have to help yourself too.
Yep.
But I feel like they're asking me that question a lot of times because they're looking for an answer outside of themselves instead of going within themselves.
We had somebody come on my show the other day, and they wanted to talk to their son who had been recently deceased, and
Yeah.
they'd been paralyzed for 2 years after this person that was close to them had left. And what we got them to do is create a space. First, get the mind and get the body quiet and relaxed, and create a space around the body. Once you create that space around the body, it's a function of your will. You actually create a space. Then you can invite into the space. In this case, she called upon the energy and the essence of her son to appear in a shape and form that she could recognize. And literally she said, this bright white door portal appeared right to her right side. And she watched her son come stepping through this door. And she had this huge release. And we had other people who've come on and done the same thing, that you create an intentional space and you can invite them in. And we've had people come and connect to their guardian angels and feel their energy. So it's really being conscious and aware that you can generate a sacred space to receive, guide your angels too.
Yeah.
And speaking of guardian angels, and angels in particular, archangels, it always fascinates me that when oracle cards and paintings, drawings of archangels, angels, they're rarely, they may take roughly the same form, but they look different. For example, or Archangel Michael, someone's interpretation or how they see Archangel Michael will be different from someone else's interpretation. Like different oracle decks they will be different things. Do you, in your experience, do they actually have a particular form, or they just appear to each individual as however they appear? Do you see what I mean?
I do. It's not an either or there. It's an and. It can be this and it can be that. When you come to things like oracle cards and divination tools like pendants and oracle, we always say that these are not devices that are meant to be used as a tool to connect to your guides and angels, but as a tool for opening up your internal mechanisms of perception. Because when you start using cards and divination tools, you're actually not using them. You're actually going inside to access information that you currently do not possess. That begins to spontaneously open up, like clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, and claircognizance. And the individuals will appear, this has been my experience and what I've observed with others, is that Archangel Raphael, Archangel Michael, Master Jesus, Buddha, these beings will appear in the shape and form that you're able to perceive them in. So it can become very uniquely individual, which it tends to be based on my experience.
So does their form, the vision that people have, the form that they take, does that matter?
Not so much the form as the awareness of the vibration of their presence. Because the vibration of their presence will often precipitate the form of perception too. Suddenly, like if I call in the energy of Master Jesus right now, I can literally feel like this pillar of heat coming down into my body, and I can feel this energy connecting me almost instantaneously. That's the way my system perceives his energy when he interacts with me. Someone else might perceive him as a cold sensation or a clear, vivid image.
It makes sense, and because it makes me think of symbols, because obviously symbols, although they may do they have a core frequency? Because obviously there are symbols that mean different things to different people, but the same symbol can mean two different things to two different people. Whereas, like, say for example, the flower of life or the symbol of the black sun or something like that, always fascinates me whether they have a core frequency, where they have a slight, like sound, for example, that has different frequencies, different hertz rates. They affect people in roughly the same way, but it sort of has a core effect, but the way that people interpret it is different. So I suppose you could say the same with archangels and angels, I guess.
You just brought in another layer of understanding to that from the perspective of perception, from your personality, from your mind body system, you can perceive very different things. From the perception of the soul level, where you're identified as mind body self, there are universal symbols, like the flower of life is universal energetically. The energy of Master Jesus will be consistent in terms of perception from the level of soul. The energy of Archangel Michael, again, when you're not identified as body, mind, personality, there are universal elements to symbology and the entities that you can connect to.
Okay.
Like one of my main go-tos is Metatron.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
That's probably my eighth one. Anyways, but yeah, I like working with Michael. I like working with Metatron, and Jesus comes in quite a bit. Yeah, but it's interesting. I feel like in past lifetimes, say we were in the jungle or something, like a being would appear more as like an animal or something of that nature, because it would be something you'd be comfortable seeing.
Yeah, yeah. Their goal is to function in relation to love with you, not in fear. If you're in a state of fear, we'll often find ourselves. I know I've experienced that. Low vibrational beings tend to represent the energy of fear. Higher
Yeah.
vibrational beings tend to represent the energy of love and calmness and peace and compassion and playfulness, excitement.
Mm.
Very different energies.
Have
And
you ever come in contact? Because I work with Syrians and some other ET species. I'm very selective, but do you ever come in contact with that?
Yeah, I've come in contact with the Pleiadians. I've brought them through multiple
Okay.
times. I brought the Lyrans through multiple times. I brought the Galactic Federation through.
Yep.
Again, there are a limitless number of beings on different frequencies
Okay.
we can connect
Oh
to.
yeah.
So, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I really like working with Lord Ashtar. But yeah, I want to get your take on that.
Are you working with the male version of him or the female version of her?
Male version of him. I've gotten people on ships. I've had them converse. There's a Syrian ship in the ocean I go to on occasion, and I'll go to their planets too. I got really strong Syrian connections. I've had past lifetimes of Syrians on Earth. So, but I do connect in with some Arcturians and stuff of that nature.
Hmm. Have you ever connected with the Blue Avians?
For some reason, I just don't resonate. I'm not sure why. I don't know why. I haven't like explored it really a lot, but for some reason it doesn't resonate. I don't know why.
Because
Could
you're
be from
not.
another lifetime. But
No, I understand because we do resonate with certain individuals, certain frequencies, and not others, and that's just natural. I
yeah.
get it. I totally get that.
what I presume you asked that because you connect with the blue avians.
I have connected with the Blue Avians, yes,
What's your
on two occasions.
experience with them? What has been
They're
your experience?
they're far more detached from human involvement than most, like the Greys or the Pleiadians or the Syrians or the Lyrans. The Blue Avians tend to be less attached to wanting to intervene in human affairs, and they're mostly about connecting to nature and helping people connect to the natural world and honoring and respecting the living force of matter, time, and space very
Hmm.
differently.
Do you think it is a bit of a strange question, but do you think that all of these other races, galactic races, shall we say, do you think they need to intervene?
Um, it's a choice. We've asked for help.
Hmm.
I mean, the very nature of the function of fear is a call for love. And humanity is predominantly in a state of fear right now, as you can see the shifts and change in the magnetic fields of the planet, the changes in social and political unrest. These are manifestations of fear, which is, in fact, a request or a call for love. So I believe some of these beings naturally and spontaneously, like a mother reacting to a child crying, these
Hmm.
beings are compelled by compassion and their love for life to react and respond and then come and interact with us.
Hmm. So I was thinking, like you said about, it makes sense. Fear being a call for love. When you were on the bridge, that was sort of you were in fear, and in that sense, you were sort of calling for love, and obviously love responded and came to help you. So in a sense, these sort of so-called low vibrational beings, they actually serve a purpose. In a way, they help show the way to love. In a sense, see what
That's
I
a
mean?
that's a really good point. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. I get those that would interfere with us can actually precipitate our calling for love.
So sort of everyone, well, not everyone, but, but people kind of worry or fear low vibrational beings, but they're actually they're serving a purpose to help reach another vibration, a vibration of love. So I found that I sort of blew my mind almost when I sort of realized that, because we go into things thinking, oh well, we can't be low vibrational or whatever, but it actually, in a sense, is just a stepping stone. And yeah, that was what kind of wild. I had to get my head around that for a bit.
There are in reality only two functions of consciousness in this physical human dimension. And that is
Mm,
the function of fear and the function of love. There aren't any other functions of energy. There's either fear or love. And we each have the opportunity to actualize or cultivate one of those functions. Each will precipitate very precise and different actions, thoughts, and functions of behavior.
Mm.
Those are the only two choices that any human being on this planet has. You either get to choose fear or you get to choose love. There aren't any other energies other than fear and love.
Yeah, when you boil it down. Yeah, makes sense.
I have this theory that Earth is like the one planet that can offset like the galactic war. Like we're a wild card planet made of like different DNAs in different human bodies. And I remember doing this as like an Arcturian in Egypt, like way far back. But like what's happening now with like people being depressed and the social media and all this other stuff. I mean, social media can serve a good purpose, a bad purpose, whatever. But what's your thoughts on that? Because I feel like we're the wild card planet of the entire like solar or our universe.
Mm.
Well, I certainly know that, like you just pointed out, there are many different DNA interactions here. There's also many different intersections going on in different dimensional realms of consciousness
Yeah.
on this planet. As to Earth being special in any sort of way, I wouldn't say that we're more special than other planetary systems, but we are certainly more challenged than some of the other planetary systems in that we are dealing with thousands of civilizations on this planet that have come and gone. We're dealing with the acquired knowledge and wisdom and experience from all of those civilizations, and we're seeing all of our acquired knowledge and experience for millennia now outpicturing itself here to come to a divine, what I believe to be a divine resolution, where we shift ourselves out of the old paradigm of pain and pleasure into the paradigm of creation.
Mm.
You know, right now we mostly live based on pain and pleasure. The vast majority of people live and move and breathe based on pain and pleasure, and we're now shifting out of that model into the function of creation,
Mm.
which is infinitely different in terms of how we think, how we act, how we feel, because then we recognize that thoughts and emotions are key ingredients in the function of creation, as opposed to just operating on the polarity of the old self, the old emotions, the body self.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, you said we're sort of is challenge is challenged. I was going to use the word unstable, almost as if there's kind of like a wide range of frequencies and emotions that go on here, and it's almost like an unstable kind of core frequency, almost, because it fluctuates so much, which I suppose is the sine wave. I suppose that's sort of representative of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I've seen channelings from others who mentioned Orion and how dark that was, and that the Earth is nothing compared to what it was like on Orion or something like that. Do you have much experience? Have you kind of channeled Orion, any beings from Orion or anything like that? Because obviously that's not all dark, you know. There are some light in amongst the dark, so it's not as if Orion's a completely dark system. And I believe, from what I've seen, if it is to be believed, then that's been transformed to light anyway now, and sort of all is good. Have you any experience with channeling Orion?
I haven't connected with any beings from that realm of consciousness. As what's been happening in the last years is they've been narrowing the focus down of my work to working primarily with the ascended masters on shifting the human collective unconsciousness from fear to love, as that is going to be the functional game changer. You know, there's two courses we're on right now. The course of fear, which gives us a very limited timeline in terms of how long this civilization that we currently experience on Earth, how long it can actually last based on our current function of, and use of the energy of fear, versus the function of love, which would produce a very different result in times and space. So I know I haven't really communicated with the Orions. I've been, again, focusing mostly on transmitting the message of the Ascended Masters to bring people to a restoration of the love inside their own minds and bodies and create a process.
It's interesting. I haven't thought about it. Like I have had past lifetimes in Andromeda, but I haven't really been connecting with certain beings the past year. I didn't really think about that. Like I was immediately in the last 10 months thrust towards the Syrians, and I didn't really like them for a long time, but then I had to talk to them. And I was like, oh, okay, these guys, like, no one messes with these guys for some reason, but they kind of just keep to themselves, except for us and a couple other planets. But yeah, it's like, I remember the galactic wars and stuff like that. But at the same time, the last 10 months, I have been kind of shifted in different ways. I have noticed that too.
What's that shift been like for you, Thomas?
It's been interesting because it's like, how do I explain it? It's been, well, there was a lot of things that happened here and there. And one thing that I had noticed is like there's a core frequency sometimes where I trigger people. And I think I've always been that way, but at the same time, it seems to be that a lot of people that aren't exactly working in the light per se are starting to get exposed. And even on other social media apps, some of these people would come against me a little bit. I can be a little bit warlike sometimes. But yeah, because I just call it out because I can see it. I can see their energy. That is my perception, but I trust my perception. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah, I guess this is about trusting, I suppose, isn't it? Regardless of whether it agrees with what everyone else says it is, it's just about trusting your own perception of things. But what was I going to say? The Ascended Masters that you work with, because I'm kind of fascinated. I mean, I've seen stuff about obviously Buddha and all of that, and what's your definition of an Ascended Master, and how do they get to being an Ascended Master?
Well, it's actually a very long process from the first time they come into a physical dimension to self-realization. I mean, Yogananda is a good example of that. The most recent example would be Yogananda or Master Saint Germain or Madame Blavatsky or a few others that have actualized that. But the actual process is shifting, again, getting an understanding that your mind and your body are instruments that you use for the function of creation. They're not who you are. These are just instruments. That's the first and foremost element of consciousness. They become aware that they are not their mind, they are not their body, they are a conscious spiritual entity that is able to articulate and install very specific and precise causes to produce very specific effects in time, space, and matter, both upon their own lives, but also in terms of influencing time, space, and matter, other people, events, and circumstances. That point of self-realization where they shift from being individualized to recognizing the connection between the universal consciousness that I am consciousness that recognizes I am you, you are I. From that perspective, at that point, they basically leave this dimension and they can work energetically through individuals that are open and receptive to that frequency. And they each have their own individuality. The energy of Master Jesus and Master Buddha, very different, although a lot of what they will say will be very similar. But their goal is always the same, to ascend their energy back to the state of the unified field of consciousness, the Godhead, whatever you want to call it, whatever term, the Great Spirit, the infinite consciousness, the grand consciousness. It doesn't matter what name you give to it. But they'll provide information to each and any individual that's open and receptive to receiving it in the structure and the intention that you're going to use it in. In my case, I'm here to be a conduit for the restoration of love to human collective unconsciousness. But yeah, Jesus if you want to talk about actual attributes, Master Jesus comes to me. He's very soft, very gentle, but very focused. Lots of heat in my body, perceives a lot of heat. Archangel Metatron, I often perceive him as behind me. And he's like pushing forward. His energy pushes me a lot. So it's he's like a more of a warrior energy than many others. Archangel Michael is very similar to Metatron, except Michael's a little more intellectual than Metatron is more like action oriented. Get into it. Michael will think things through, talk a little bit differently. Again, it depends upon the situation, the circumstances, and what the desired goal is for that particular communication is going to be. If the communication is to heal, that's one function of energy. If the communication is to elevate an individual from subjectivity to their mind and body, that's another element of vibrational communication. If it is to work with a collective or a greater collective, that's again another function of consciousness that's different.
Mm. And I remember when I did the channeling course, your channeling course, it must have been about 4 or 5 years ago, when I started the 101, and you did a trance channeling. I think it was Kuan Yin, but I can't. It might, no, not Kuan Yin. Kali. I think it was Kali. I think it was her. I can't remember. But do you still do trance? Like, because obviously, I remember seeing you demonstrate that, or when were you
That's
doing it? You sort of moved it to one side. You moved your consciousness or yourself to one side and allowed her to come in and speak through you. Do you still do that?
Yes, I still do that, but I'm never putting myself completely aside anymore.
Okay.
I'm there and I'm observing because I always monitor and make certain that the vibrational frequency is in alignment with love. Because I know that when you're connected to an ascended, when you're connected to Master Jesus, I have no fear about what's going to be said. I can sit and observe and know and trust and feel the flow. That energy is pure and perfect and loving. With Kuan Yin, I mean, when I first channeled her again about 5 years ago, I'm glad you remember that. I had to do a purification process.
That's right. Yeah, I remember you saying.
She said your body is very low vibrational. You have to drink a lot of. You have to do these things before I will channel through you. So, because some of them are, she said my body was my energy was very dense, and I had to elevate it up by drinking water and eating a whole bunch more of different living foods. It's as far as Kali goes, I can't recall ever channeling Kali. I know that Kristen Davies channeled Kali when we were live together once. But Kali's energy is kind of like, for me, it's like, no, thank you. That's just a little too much of that. Like she likes to really push things intensely, and I've never been a big fan of pushing things intensely. Just allowing the intensity of the energy to do the work. But I can't do anything.
Yeah,
But yeah, I do put myself aside, but more like I'm observing and monitoring without the process of, I don't analyze or weigh or measure, but I feel that the vibration is in alignment with what I believe the function of love is. And I monitor that very carefully. But I still experience that where the eyes will close and they'll be speaking through me. That happens in our classes all the time, where a being will come through and I'm just aware that they're speaking through my body. I can hear what's being said. I can feel how all the other students are feeling and responding to it. But I'm in that process of allowing, and that happens, every single. It happens every day in my life now. It's not something that I can turn it on. I can turn it off when I need to. I can allow, or I can say no, not right now.
Yeah, it might be a bit inconvenient sometimes.
I think I bring this up every podcast. Edgar Casey is one of my favorite people of all time. Have you seen him come through as an ascended master at all?
Actually, yes. Yes, he's actually made that ascension. He actually made that ascension, not as Edgar Casey, but as the soul that he is.
Yeah.
When they make those transitions, they remember they remember their past lives, but they're not identified with any one of them. If you ask them a question, they'll say, you'll be asking a question as Edgar Casey. He'll present to you based on that information of lifetime because that's what you're requesting. If you say to them, can you present to me from the perspective of another lifetime of yours? And they'll present from that perspective too. But I loved Edgar Casey and his work. And who he is as a being now is, again, the function of love. When you transition from mind, body, self, and you truly recognize what you are as a spiritual consciousness, as a soul, a spirit of universal light, when you really access that, there's a whole other experience of sensation that you get from them and you get for yourself when you step into that. And we see that happen all the time in our master class, where people are guided by these ascended masters literally into a state of love and grace. And they're embodying it and experiencing it. And that's, for me, that's the real big change for people, is when they come in contact with that function of love from an ascended master. It's a huge game changer. I mean, Thomas was saying earlier that he does work in helping people release dark entities. And what happens when that happens? You got light left over, and there's a feeling of freedom and euphoria that you can't get by just doing mind gymnastics.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. How do you feel like the subconscious? This is a path I've been going down a lot lately. The subconscious affects how we channel and spiritual abilities and all this.
Well, that's a great question. I mean, there's two levels of the subconscious mind. There's the subconscious mind of your personality, which is your acquired lifetimes of experience, including this one. And then there's the infinite spectrum of all-knowing consciousness that's below the layer of personality in past lives. And I think that when we gain access to the subconscious mind of a personality, we can help people make rapid, profound changes in their individualized personality. And if you can get them to bypass that into the infinite field, they can literally go through a quantum leap in their consciousness. And again, I've borne witness to that, where people will suddenly dissolve years or lifetimes of pain and anguish, just suddenly get blown out from the system, like blowing a hose out. And now that the energy's flowing, they're feeling their bliss, and they're going, "Wow, I am love. I am love. I am love." And so yeah, there's those two layers: the personality of the subconscious mind, the William part, or the Jimmy part, or the Thomas part. Our personalized structure from this biological experience is one aspect, and then there's the what I call the past lives, and then the infinite spectrum of the all-knowing intelligence within us. And most people get stuck on the first layer. Some people explore the second, and where they get into past lives, they start to remember things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And very few go into that other realm where they surrender to that infinite realm of information, which is what the ascended masters basically do. They're a part of that field.
How many past lives do you remember? Do you remember? Do they sort of come in waves? Are they sort of in dreams or?
Well, I have clear memory of multiple lifetimes. My wife and I have experienced 12 lifetimes together, where we literally went through the joy of meeting, the pain of separation. We lived through that. The lifetime that has been the most influential in all my lifetimes is my lifetime as Julius Caesar, where I acquired and misused a lot of power and authority, and I've spent the last 2,000 years making corrections to that function. But that's the one I am most aware and conscious of, that lifetime. If I want, if I felt it would be useful to access other elements, other lifetimes, I would be doing that. But the one that was the most destructively negative upon humanity is the one that I had to correct, and have spent the last 2,000 years making the corrections to that, so that the function of love could be reactualized, not only through myself, but also for humanity collectively. Because when you understand how to transmit a vibration, and you're very clear about that, there's a process for the subconscious mind known as induction. And that process of induction means that you can transmit an idea or a frequency with such consistency that it induces a change in the structure or the medium through which it's passing. A good example of that is you're in a restaurant with friends, and you're sitting down, you're chatting away, and suddenly you catch a sound of music playing in the background. And all of a sudden you find yourself with this music in the background, causing you to kind of sway or tap your fingers or feet. That music induces your body into a function that you weren't even aware of, and said, "Oh, the music, and I'm tapping my fingers." That same process happens when you're transmitting very specific frequencies, whether it's love or fear or joy or compassion. If you are clear and intentional about the transmission of a frequency, you can induce a functional change in people anywhere. Again, Thomas was talking about releasing these entities. These process of releasing dark entities requires that he be in a certain frequency himself, and through the process of induction, he projects or transmits a frequency that literally changes that individual's energy, and that lower vibrational frequency can't bond to it anymore because the frequency's changed.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of a video I saw earlier. Actually, there was a baby who was crying, and the mother handed the father a sound bowl, a singing bowl, and just one ring of the singing bowl, the baby just stopped crying, went silent, and seemed to calm. And I suppose you could argue that crying is a good release of emotion and chemical constituents that are stored up, and getting them out. I don't know how that, obviously, how that reflects in babies, whether they're crying is because they don't know how else to communicate or have you, and it's the only way they know how to communicate it if they're unhappy or whatever. But what you said reminded me of that, how just the sound can just transform a situation and a feeling.
Yeah.
And singing bowls are a great idea to do that, I suppose.
Yeah, there's been a science emerging in the last 5 or 6 years called cymatics,
Mm.
where they're clearly demonstrating that certain frequencies of sound and voice and word will restructure energy instantaneously.
Mm.
So that principle figures very prominently in the process of ascension and transformation. That once you
Mm.
understand that you can transmit and other people can receive a vibration, then it becomes a valuable resource for helping people end their suffering very quickly, because people will spend lifetimes repeating the same problem again and again and again. That's connected to an emotional energy that they store in their DNA, and they bring it in the next lifetime and next lifetime.
Mm.
With a single vibrational frequency, you
Mm.
can literally shift lifetimes
Mm.
of repetitive conditions of an unpleasant nature just by shifting the electromagnetic frequency of that energy in the body.
And they've shown that in I've seen in cathedral, a cymatic thing in cathedrals, and the patterns that are shown in cathedral windows, and they're shown that they are cymatic patterns. So they must have known about the effect that frequencies and their shapes and different forms have on the healing properties of them, because obviously you've got these big organs in cathedrals, you know, whether they were places of worship or whether they were healing chambers. I suppose it's open to debate. I know which way I would sway, obviously being healing chambers, but they obviously knew about the cymatic patterns and their effects whenever the cathedrals were built, which speaks to obviously what you were saying. So I found it fascinating how we tend to think the old world or the medieval times, they didn't know anything, and they were just a load of Neanderthals just walking around chucking mud at each other and all of that. But actually they had far more knowledge, I think, than what than what we give them credit for, or what we're taught.
Yeah, it's interesting you can bring that up. I don't know if you guys have heard of the Tartarian Empire.
Yep.
Love
where they had extent. I mean, as recently as 150 years ago, they were quite a civilization, and a lot of the buildings we've inherited from them that do show those patterns of cymatics that were intended to heal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I understand. That's very exciting. That whole concept of being able that you can actually just sit present with a person, be in a certain quality of energy, and change people around you just instantaneously without having to be overt in any way, shape, or form. Once you understand that you can transmit a frequency without even speaking a word, and that when you know that this process is happening and that you can initiate it, then you can have a much more pronounced and profound effect on the consciousness of people around you at any time. Right? The ascended masters do that all the time. They walk around with a field that's like massive. Like when they come in, their field is massive, and people come into that field and they go, "Ooh, wow!" And it's amazing just by the process. They don't have to try to do it; they're just being the field, and the field does the work. Right?
Yeah, totally.
Because you well know.
I remember a friend of mine. We were walking through a park, and when we got done, I looked at him, and he's chosen. He's like a prophet, and I was like, we just cleared out this entire park, and he doesn't like dealing with negative stuff at all. He's scared like S-less of this, but like he just looked at me because he knew I was right. And I was like, dude, we just cleared out this whole park, just walking around it.
Yeah, we had the other I do live shows now, and I've started bringing people on my live shows. And this one woman the other night came on, and she had a horrible event happen. Her employer, when she was like 16, kidnapped her for 2 weeks. And I won't go into the details about what happened to her, but this has been a trauma for her for the last 30 years. So she's holding the fear, whatever that trauma was. We don't need to know the details to make corrections in the energy. But we had her go to a position in her consciousness where her consciousness literally embraced the entire 2 week period. She literally had her awareness feel that 2-week time. What we had her do when she could feel the space of that time from now, then, we had her turn her attention to it and simply speak these words. No matter what I've thought or felt or believed about you, I love you, even if I don't understand you. And she just repeated those words a few times, but very precisely directed to speak, think those words in an intonation of sincerity. And what happened literally in like 45 seconds,
Mm.
she burst into these tears as all the pain that she was holding in her body, that 2 weeks was still living in her body.
Mm.
That process of interaction literally transcended or transmuted the energy. So the pain, the fear, the rage, the anger that was all held in her body for the last 30 years suddenly vanished. And she felt this state of just total freedom.
Mm. Yeah.
And she was able to then look back at all the memory of what happened in those 2 weeks
Mm.
and feel no pain, no upset, no anger anymore. Because once you're able to release old emotions from the system or transform them from one state to another,
Mm.
you liberate yourself from that suffering. And it's not a complex or difficult process. It's actually extremely simple. But you need to find a person that's willing, open, and receptive to walking through and being willing to love the unlovable, so to speak.
Mm.
To actually go to your pain. Very few people are taught when you're in pain, turn to your pain and say, no matter how much pain you're in, I love you anyway. I won't abandon you. I'll take care of you. Very few people talk to their suffering.
Mm.
So that part of them gets compartmentalized into the body, causes health problems, other types of dysfunction. And once they learn how to actually extend the frequency of love into their own bodies, into their own minds, they become transformers and then contributors to the function of love on the planet.
Mm. So it's kind of like forgiveness, I suppose, in a sense.
Yeah.
Letting go of that, because I remember the card when I did do cards, the Oracle deck that I used to use, the Master Jesus card was, they all had a sort of a moniker or a word that signified, that sort of represented them, and the Master Jesus one was forgiveness, and they had a little bit about forgiveness, and sort of he sort of taught that, which kind of well, obviously, you know, it makes sense.
Because when he first talked and started talking about forgiveness, he said the term forgiveness originated from the language he first taught in, which is Aramaic. And the word forgiveness, when put back literally into the Aramaic language, essentially translates into letting go of.
All right.
That's what the term forgiveness literally means, to let go of.
Mm.
And that letting go requires that you not hold on to it anymore. Right?
Yeah.
And when you extend love to your sadness, you extend love to your pain, you extend love to your guilt and shame, it transforms it. And that process is literally a forgiveness, a letting go of.
Mm. Yeah. And obviously with the word forgiveness often is tagged the word forget. So forgive and forget, or you'll forgive but you won't forget. How do you see do we need to forget, or do we need to still remember, or
It's important you remember.
Mm.
I mean, I as you know, Jimmy, you might know this story. I went through extreme sexual, emotional, and physical abuse at the hands of his stepfather from age 7 to age 13.
Mm.
In that process, it was a horrible time, very difficult, and for many years afterward, there were very detrimental and harmful effects.
Mm.
When I got to the place where I was able to, since they've been teaching me, to go back to those events and heal the parts of me that were angry, enraged, terrified, all those emotions that were stored in my body from those events. When I released those emotions, when I transformed those emotions, I no longer have pain. I can look back and I can remember all of those events and have absolutely no pain. And remembering the events connects me to an energy called compassion for people that are going through something similar or who have gone through something similar. Because then with the energy of compassion that I've acquired from my own experience, I can totally understand and extend that energy to anybody.
Mm.
And they'll receive it and they'll be transformed by it. And Master Jesus did the same thing. Buddha does the same thing. Yoga did the same thing. They went through their suffering and their pain for many lifetimes. Once you have acquired that process of healing, you don't forget anything. In fact, your memory will increase and improve. You start to remember more lifetimes. You start to remember very specific details that will no longer influence or affect you in a negative way. Memory is very important. It teaches us to be mindful of not repeating the same things as well.
Mm. Yeah, totally. I mean, because Rebecca says here, is forgetting even possible? The hard drive remembers, and I think, well, so you hear about people saying they don't recall an event, and then some say it's because we leave our bodies because of such a traumatic event, and then when the sort of the event is over, we come back in our body, and so therefore we have no memory of the event. So, sort of to answer Rebecca's question, is forgetting even possible?
No, it's not, in truth. It's not. Because everything exists in the quantum field eternally.
Mm,
Everything.
mm,
You know, but when you get into these things, people are at different levels of understanding and perception, although in the essence, we all have awareness of all things. The vast majority of people are compartmentalized into an individualized identity in this lifetime. And so the concept of having full memory of everything
mm,
might be a far stretch for some people. It's just the same as for a lot of people, the far stretch of considering that there are other dimensions, multidimensional beings, that there are other planetary systems that we can connect. It can be a far stretch because so many people have been manipulated into a compartmentalized identity.
mm,
It's hard to conceive. But once they break out of that, then
mm,
then it starts to become available very easily.
mm. Yeah. I mean, I think I might have mentioned this before on a podcast, but when I think I was about 13, 14, something like that, I ran into a goalpost and knocked myself out unconscious. I cannot remember anything from the time when I see the football go over my head to waking up on the floor about 20 meters behind the goal. I can't remember getting to that place, but I know that memory is in there somewhere. It's just that, I need to do something to access it.
Yeah. Well, there's the default systems of the body. When something happens to the body that's extremely traumatic, it shuts off,
Mm,
and the soul literally leaves the form.
mm,
And that happens, when something like that happens, what you could do is you can literally go back to the point of either before or after,
mm,
and you can request the consciousness of the body to
mm,
reveal to you its memory of the experience,
mm.
while instructing the body that it will not remember any of the pain.
Okay, cool.
Because the reason the body blocks there is because of the physical trauma to the system. So
Mm,
it remembers, I don't want to experience this again. So it shuts that memory system off, although it's still there in the subconscious field.
mm,
But you've got to literally instruct the body
mm,
to know that it's going to be perfectly safe to remember what happened to it.
mm.
And
Okay.
then the memory will start to free up.
Excellent. I'll give that a go. Thank you, William.
You're welcome. Again, most of what comes through me isn't mine anymore.
Mm,
It literally isn't. A lot of what comes through me is from them.
mm,
And I'm literally a footstool for the wisdom and the knowledge of the masters that is here to guide and liberate people from unnecessary suffering.
mm,
But I'm just curious. I I see we're getting up to almost about an hour's time here,
mm.
and I do have other engagements that I will need to get to.
Yeah, we normally go about an hour, if that's all right. Sort of with you.
But I'm curious. Do you have a specific master that you would like to receive a message from?
Actually, funny enough, you must be psychic. I was going to ask you if you wanted to pull a message through from someone. So, do you have any preference, Thomas, or is just whoever William, whoever chooses to come through?
Aaron Ganesh.
Ganesh, have you channeled Ganesh
Ganesh.
before?
Mm. Well, if I tune into Ganesh's energy, what I get is it's humanity's time to focus on wealth and prosperity is over. They have to begin to now return themselves to the responsibility of love, as their obsession with material things is doing more harm than good to the consciousness of all of you here.
Hmm.
If you really want to find the freedom you are seeking, you must surrender your pursuit of material things and restore yourself to love's function. This is most important. You can come to me and I will grant you things. I will offer you the vibration to receive things. But many of you receiving them get simply more confused, more frustrated. As you can see all around you now, your brothers and sisters are lost in stuff in the pursuit of these things. You don't need them so much anymore. You need to, again, rely more on your function of love. Remember your function of love in this world now. It will be much harder to remember it in the next lifetime. You have the opportunity while you're in an embodiment to remember who you are here and now. And this is essential. It is essential not only for yourself, but all those to whom your destiny in this dimension are connected with at this point of time and space. Yes.
Mm.
Be
Thank you.
patient. Be patient.
Yeah, patience is a good one.
Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you, guys.
Mm.
Thank you for having me on the show today. And I want to thank Ganesh for being present, Master Jesus, and the others that have come through us all today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on. I think the words of wisdom that you channel through you and that you put forward, you know, I always learn a lot from you, listening to your lives and everything like that I watch. And you know, you were one of the ones who started me out on this journey, so I'm forever grateful to you for that. Thank you.
Well, isn't that coincidental? Because you're one of the ones that started us out on this journey too.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if you guys have been seeing the questions coming up on the screens or not.
Mm. We've been seeing some of them. I kind of let's have a look. Are there any ones that particularly you wanted to address?
There's quite a few, so I think we can pick one or two.
Yeah. I didn't know if you wanted to do any sort of. I know someone asked for a reading, but we're not really doing readings.
Well, most of the things I'm seeing here are people sending and sending love to all of us and gratitude. And someone named Francisco Javier Osa Andrea Sella is saying just like the intricate patterns found in crop circles, these are considered harmonic. He's talking about, I think, your recognition of cymatic patterns. It's not a question, mostly a statement. But these are mostly statements of gratitude and appreciation. There's actually a group called the Greys. Yes, Leslie's asking. There's actually a group called the Greys. Yes, there is. I think you work with them too, Thomas. The Greys.
We don't always get along too well.
I'm not surprised. Yeah, there's actually a group called the Greys. There's a Canadian politician who was the former Paul Hellyer, who was the former Canadian Minister for Defence in Canada, who's released another video stating that the Greys have been here for quite some time. It's now there's a lot of people coming up. But yeah, there are an actual group called the Greys, Leslie. Let's see here.
So the people who mentioned the Elohim.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love the Elohim. They came through earlier last week. It was wonderful.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh cool.
Okay, but I'm not seeing any other questions. Rest of it is mostly just gratitude and appreciation to all of us, and I'm truly grateful for that. Thank you so much. And again, I'm so grateful that you guys thought of reaching out to me. And again, I am. Yeah, I've got only one function for the rest of this lifetime. That is to help restore humanity to a function of love. Most of the information you'll hear come through this body is not mine. It's theirs. I really am just a footstool. I'm just a messenger, and I am grateful for that position.
Do you because I find that do you notice a change in yourself in the way that you speak, in the way that you elucidate?
Yes, that's
between like your conscious self and what you channel through. You know what I mean? I always notice that in myself.
There have been often total difference in speech syntax, the language, body posturing, the way the eyes change. There's whole kinds of physical phenomena that I observe that's quite fascinating because I know my body very well. But when someone else moves through it or communicates through it, I do witness the changes. Voice tone changes. With Michael and Jesus, the voice can change and go deeper. It depends on who's coming through. But yeah, I do notice those things, and I just delight in all of them. Right?
Yeah. I noticed that in you as well, so I thought you probably noticed it yourself. But
yeah, I do notice it. But when I'm sitting and it's like watching a beautiful sunset. Whenever they come through me, it's like I'm just watching this beauty of love flow through me, and I just want to be present with it and observe it and delight in that. I'm not attached to any of it anymore. I'm just again in this process of allowing. That's far more important.
So I think a lot of the resistance that I know I've experienced that myself, the resistance we sometimes feel,
Yeah.
something's trying to come through, will sort of block it.
Yeah.
Not necessarily completely, but we know when we're truly connected because we can feel the change within us and notice the change in our speech or whatever.
Yes. Yes. And those are natural phenomena that occur when a different consciousness is working through the body. The voice can often sound like sometimes I will hear it sounding like my voice, but I'm not hearing it like my voice in the way I'm hearing it.
Yeah.
That's something a lot of people don't understand, that this body is structured in a certain way and information will flow through it in a certain way. But again, it's unique and different. I mean, you take somebody like Jay-Z Knight from back in the 70s who was channeling Ramtha. Or you take, what's her name? Oh, she's a beautiful soul. She's another medium where she goes through visceral changes in her body and her appearance. And they're really obvious. Bashar is another one. We have a very pronounced change in the language and the syntax of Bashar communicating through that form.
Are you thinking that the woman? Are you thinking of Abraham? Abraham Hicks, Esther Hicks. Is that the
Well,
one?
she's one too. I mean, she certainly goes through clear changes because I've seen her personally and I've seen her
Oh, right.
when she's channeling. So again, it's unique for the individual and the mechanism and the arrangement you make with them. You have to be in agreement. The only time if there's not an agreement, that's a possession.
Yeah.
If you're in fear or pain or suffering, you're being possessed. If you're in a state of love and grace, you're moving in a very different state. I speak about possession only in the negative sense, not the positive sense, because when they're working through me, there's no fear, there's no negativity at all. At all.
Sure. Thomas, you got any questions? Any questions to
I don't
finish
want to hold him over an hour, man.
Yeah, guys, and I'm so grateful. Thank you so much.
Do you want to shout out your website, any courses that you've got running at the moment?
Yeah, for those of you that are interested in knowing more about the work I do, you can go to my website, williammichaelforbes.com. You can just Google William Michael Forbes. You'll get access to my live events on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook that happen Monday through Saturday. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we are live on TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook, streaming simultaneously from 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we stream exclusively on TikTok from 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and onwards. And the goal of everything that comes through this body is to restore humanity to its natural function of love, which will create a proper balance in our global electrical systems as well. There's a great imbalance because of the human collective emotion of fear. This must be changed. But you can go to those stations, go to my website, williammichaelforbes.com. We got our upcoming Masterclass 103, which begins in about 4.5 weeks. We're right in the middle of our Masterclass 102, which is about liberation. And 103 is all about creation. And the course is very specifically structured to take people from awakening to liberation from old emotions, to learning how to create with new energy, and then transcendence, which is about elevating your consciousness to the level of the masters. But yeah, you just check out my website, williammichaelforbes.com. You'll get all the juicy details there. And thank you guys again so much for inviting me.
Thank you.
I'm truly grateful.
Likewise. Thank you, brother. Thank you, Thomas. And thank you, everyone, for watching and for joining in and the questions and everything like that. And we shall see
you on Spotify, Rumble, and Facebook group, The Psychic Kitchen.
Oh, yeah. Well done, Thomas. I always forget about that. Thanks. Right. Thank you, everyone. And we'll see you all next week. Thank you, William, again.
God bless everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Au revoir.